Welcome to the committee, the Strategic Planning Committee this afternoon. We'll crack straight on with the agenda. So item number 1, membership of the committee. So just to update members, you've probably seen we have had a change of personnel. So Councillor Suli Richards is now a member of the committee. Unfortunately, she's sent her apologies today because she's away at last minute entry. So she'll be at future meetings, but she can't be here today. Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. Are we okay with those minutes? Yep. Okay. Declarations of interest and lobbying. We'll just go around if everyone's got anything. Councillor Sokol. Any declarations of interest?
Chair, I believe I think I received one email. Yeah, I don't know if was the objection or what. So thank you.
None, Chair.
None, Chair.
I've been contacted by residents in the North Road area, but I'll give them no advice, take no action.
Thank you. Yeah, nothing from me, Sheila. Okay, admission of the public. Yeah, it's a public meeting. We'll be having the meeting in public and on the webcast. Questions? Any public questions?
No questions, Chair.
And deputations?
No deputations or petitions.
Okay, so we'll go straight to the planning applications. There's only one application. We did a site visit this morning, spent quite a lot of time at the site and the surrounding road network, so that was really useful. But we'll go straight there onto item 9, the Stores Hall Student Village application. Nick, I'll hand over to you when you're ready.
Apologies, the IT problems continue. It'll be 1 minute. Apologies, Chair. Apologies, members. So, yeah, thank you very much. Good day, members. My name is Nick Hurst, Case Officer for this application. The application before you seeks permission to demolish the buildings on site, outline permission for the erection of up to 261 dwellings, including the consideration of access into the site for vehicles. The proposal also includes a residential conversion of the listed building, Lodge Cottage, and the non-listed administration building. All other matters, namely the appearance, scale, layout and landscaping, would be reserved matters for later consideration. Note that this is a slightly amended description as set out within the update. The description amendment relates to the demolition aspect of the proposal being separated from the outline aspect. So the image before members shows the application site, which is the former Stores Hall Student Village, itself part of the former Stores Hall Hospital site. The last of the student accommodation closed in July 2024. The site sits within a wooded environment with thick tree belts to most of the boundaries and tree also within the site. This image denotes the extent of the green belt in green. The blue shows the allocation in the local plan, which encompasses the entirety of the former Stores Hall Hospital grounds. The local plan allocates the site for housing, however, it does remain within the green belt. While development in the Greenbelt is restricted, exemptions include the redevelopment of brownfield sites, such as this, that do not have a substantially greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. This application relates to only the northern portion of the site as denoted by the red line plan. For context, the southern section has a permission for the erection of a 300-unit retirement village, which has since been, with the site having been cleared. This image shows the relationship between the two parts of the allocation, with the application site being the red to the north. As noted previously, the site is heavily wooded. This image shows the extent of tree preservation orders within the site. These are denoted by the green areas and the individual tree symbols. Also of note, denoted in blue, are listed buildings. Within the site, this includes the lodge and the adjacent gate pillars at the site's eastern access. The yellow circles denote 2 non-designated heritage assets within the site. The following images give an indication of the site's current arrangements, including their impact on the openness. This image shows examples of the student accommodation on the right, with the northern tree belt on the left. The student accommodation blocks are a mixture of 3 and 4 stories clustered together around the centre of the site. This image shows the front elevation of the reception building, the first of the non-designated heritage assets. The proposal would retain this building. This is the second of the non-designated heritage assets, known as the venue. The left image is of the rear elevation. The left image is on the front elevation, and the right is of the rear, where modern interventions have been erected. This building would be demolished as part of the proposal. This final image shows the listed gate piers and lodge cottage behind. Lodge cottage is to be retained, converted to a dwelling. The gate piers would also be retained, however slightly relocated to each respective side to widen the access road. The residential development of the site is an outline submission, with all matters, bar access, into the site being reserved matters. The vehicle points of access are a consideration of this submission, however. Details of the reserved matters would need to be submitted as part of later applications. This plan, titled the Structures Plan, sets out the parameters to be secured now, which the reserved matters would need to comply with. Of note, this does show the proposed tree felling. The trees to be removed are those denoted by broken lines and include many of those within the centre of the site. The vast majority of the tree belt surrounding the site would, however, be retained. The plan also denotes the developable area for houses, as denoted by the orange line and the white ground, that the reception building would be retained and that a spine road connecting the two accesses would be provided. This image is an indicative plan of how the site could be developed to demonstrate feasibility. It removes the various layers and notes of the structures plan for a clearer image of how the site could be developed. I will, however, reiterate that this plan is indicative and therefore the future reserve matters may appear different, albeit they would still need to adhere to the structures plan parameters. The report before members outlines Officer's full assessment of the proposal. In summary, the site is a housing allocation within the local plan. While the site remains in the green belt, as brownfield land allocated for housing within the local plan, the test is whether the proposal would represent a greater impact upon the openness of the green belt compared to that existing. Currently, the site consists of numerous large 3- or 4-storey buildings which have a notable impact on openness, although the site's strong tree belts mitigates this, but the tree belt would be retained. All pertinent design matters which would establish the site's direct impact on openness are reserved. Therefore, the development's final impact on openness cannot be determined until the reserve matter stage. However, subject to the structures plan being adhered to, securable via condition, and other conditions are recommended within the report, officers are satisfied that a suitably designed scheme that would not have a greater impact on openness may be provided at reserve matters stage. Therefore, the principle of redevelopment of the site is considered to be acceptable. In regard to highway implications, through you, Chair, I'll invite Adam Darwin from the Kirklees Highways to comment.
Thank you. Access is proposed in the general location of the 2 existing access points onto Storesall Lane. This involves upgrading the existing entrance and exit junctions to allow them to be used two-way. Both accesses have been assessed in terms of traffic capacity and have been subject to comprehensive swept path analysis and an independent Stage 1 road safety audit and are considered acceptable. As part of the road safety audit process, it was recommended that minor carriageway widening is provided on Storesall Lane adjacent to the western access. This is to ensure that two-way traffic flow on Storesall Lane is not affected by turning traffic at the junction and to ensure that on-street parking opposite the access is unaffected. As the application is an outline, the internal site layout is not being considered in detail at this stage. However, it's been agreed that a spine road will be provided between the 2 site accesses that can accommodate a future bus route. And the applicant has agreed to fund a new bus service together with funding for new bus shelters, real-time displays at the stops within the site. Access for the existing site uses that to be retained, including the various sports facilities, will be maintained via the upgraded site access and spine road. The traffic impact of the development has been assessed on the widened highway network using an industry standard methodology and a robust assessment of development traffic impact. This has confirmed that development traffic can be accommodated without causing severe impact on the operation of the network and is considered acceptable. The development proposals include improvements at the Storesall Lane junction onto Penistone Road. Which have been designed to improve the current arrangement that's not to modern standards and to address some of the existing operational issues that can occur. This includes rebuilding part of the retaining wall on the south side of the junction to help improve junction visibility and various changes to road markings to ease turning movements of the junction. Significant pedestrian improvements are proposed to enable a continuous footway link to be provided between Stores Hall Lane and Penistone Road. As there are currently gaps in the footway provision. This involves the installation of three-way shuttle working traffic signals at Stores Hall Bridge to allow a footway to be provided over the bridge on the south side. A new controlled pedestrian crossing is also proposed on Penistone Road, which would complete the pedestrian link, enabling people to walk between Stores Hall and Kirkburton. These improvements are considered to be a significant positive element of the scheme. In summary, the development is considered acceptable from a highways perspective. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Chair. On other planning matters, there are considered to be no fundamental issues which would prevent appropriate details pertaining to the amenity of residents, both neighbouring and futuring occupiers, or urban design being brought forward at reserve matters stage. As noted within the report, the proposal does include the loss of many mature trees, including a number currently protected by tree preservation orders. It does also include the demolition of one of the non-designated heritage assets of the venue. These are accepted as negatives of the proposal. Officers have worked with the applicant throughout the process to minimise such aspects of the proposal, including securing the retention of the reception building and additional trees compared to the initial scheme. Ultimately, planning is a balance of material considerations where the negatives are weighed against benefits. In this case, while acknowledging the harm, including regarding the trees and the venue being removed, the public benefits of the proposal, including the delivery of housing at a time of need, the local highway improvements, and economic benefits, are concluded to outweigh the harm caused. All other material planning considerations, such as ecology and drainage, have been considered and are addressed within the report. Regarding contributions, a policy-compliant package in regarding to education, open space, sustainable travel, and on-site management would be secured as part of the 106, subject to the details to come forward at reserve matters stage. For affordable housing, in accordance with National Vacant Building Credit Policy, the proposal would secure a 10% affordable housing contribution, as opposed to the policy expectation of 20%. 59 representations expressing concerns, including comments from the Parish Council, have been received in response to the proposal across 2 public representation periods. These are considered and addressed within the report and update. We have also received a late objection from Councillor Munro from the neighbouring Almondbury ward. She has objected on the grounds of impact and harm to the Greenbelt, as well as the local highway impacts, specifically Penistone Road. Officers are satisfied that these matters are considered and addressed within the report and in the update. Therefore, officers are recommending approval of the proposal, subject to securing conditions and a Section 106 agreement, including the amended description and additional comments noted within the update. Nothing further, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So we have a few people to speak on this. So first we're going to Heather Peacock. Heather, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. You can start when you're ready.
When I first saw the application, I think it was nearly 2 years ago, for the residential development at Stores Hall, I was absolutely staggered. And at the eye-watering amount of trees that were going to go into this application that would be lost. I've never seen such a development of just such mass destruction to the natural world as this. I haven't seen anything in all the years I've been doing tree activism, climate emergency activism. I've never seen anything like it. The first tree officer's report was an objection on the grounds of LP 73, LP 33, LP 24, which was good. But with the revised information that we've just got recently, I contacted the tree office to see if anything had been moved on the trees, and they said it has slightly, but it's worse in some areas, better in others. So I'll just go through that. The northern access will have a minimum impact on trees. The southern access will result in some tree loss. The east and western boundaries, almost all trees will be retained. However, there will be some loss of trees in the internal side of the boundary, and mitigation is planned for these. The central northern extensive tree removal. The young trees, and this is why I don't agree with mitigation, the young trees that were planted when it became student accommodation, probably to mitigate tree loss, are now getting pulled. They're about 30, I'd say they were about 32 years old from the early 90s, and they're going. So we're talking mitigation that is not protected and is just doesn't get to maturity. That needs addressing. Central southern trees are category A and B trees of large stature, prominent site featured. Mitigation is suggested again for these trees. But the tree officer has said it will take hundreds of years to reach the same amenity value that these trees are provided. Even any mitigation is going to take hundreds of years to replace these trees. The venue, formerly known as the Boretorium, which means botanical gardens devoted to trees, is going to go. These trees are going to go. And they're category A and B trees. The tree officer said the loss of these trees is regrettable, and I call it vandalism. The tree officer concludes it's down to the planning balance to determine the positives and negatives. I can't see a positive apart from a load of money going to the main builders, to be fair. And I can just, at 10% of affordable housing, it's not good enough. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Heather. So next, Councillor Taylor, will be you. You've got 5 minutes to speak, and yeah, we'll put the clock on.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I'll stay seated. Normally, a committee, you're probably used to people coming along, councillors like myself, to object to planning applications. Actually, today I'm not objecting to this planning application. I'm actually speaking in favour of the application. It's clear that this site, it's allocated in the local plan. This site needs to be used. The students have moved out. We've all seen the volume of new student accommodation that's been built in town, and you can understand why students would prefer to be co-located with the university rather than a bus ride away. So something needs to happen with this site. As with all planning applications, there are positives and negatives. There are positives about this site. The fact that it will create housing, and we know that we have a shortfall in housing at the moment. It will benefit the economy. It will reuse otherwise what will be a redundant site. I note that the applicant has asked that demolition be included as part of the outline, because already we're seeing significant vandalism occurring there, because effectively what you've got is a load of student flats that are empty, and all it's going to do is attract more vandalism or more antisocial behaviour in a quiet part of the Kirkburton. So I support that as well in terms of getting on with it. The venue, whilst in an ideal world you wouldn't lose buildings like the venue, you saw in the plan the site for the top half of this site where the retirement village is going to be. That originally had a hospital on it. That was a heritage building, but that's all gone. And that was done to enable the building of houses as well. So that, you need to look at those both in the balance. There are positives. The new bus service is a positive because since the students left, we've lost the bus service that used to come up Stores Hall Lane, which was available for the residents of Stores Hall Lane to use as well as the students. So it's good to see that coming back. I do have concerns, and I do still have concerns about the highways issues at the junction of Penistone Road. And it doesn't relate just to this application, but when you look at a bit wider and you see other planning applications are coming through, I do worry how traffic will be able to exit Stores Hall Lane and turn right, or enter Stores Hall Lane from the right, particularly at peak times, because you see the amount of traffic that there is on Penistone Road. You don't often get breaks in the traffic to allow that movement. But I guess, as I said at the beginning on this is all about the balance. On balance, this makes sense. There's a lot of reserved matters, and I'll be paying very close attention to those reserved matters as they develop. I'll also be paying very close attention to what we get in terms of Section 106 monies as well, to make sure that that is beneficial for our community and for local residents. I welcome the changes to remove some of the changes at North Road. They felt inappropriate and didn't really link to the application. But I mean, it's down to you as a committee to determine this, but I think it has support. I have for the last 2 years worked closely with the community to make sure that the community are aware of what was planned here. You know, I've spoken at the community association meetings at the parish council. I even went and spoke with the local history group to talk to them about the impact. And you've seen from the number of objections and comments that have been received, it hasn't received a huge number given the scale of this development, which suggests that I've managed to keep the community on side as well and supportive of this development. I think I'll leave it there, Chair, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And the last person to speak is we've got Mark Johnson on behalf of the applicant. So Mark, you'll have 3 minutes. Start when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think a lot of what I was about to say has actually been spoken by Councillor Taylor, so I'll try and keep this relatively brief. First of all, the applicant clearly supports the officer's recommendation, and we think it's a well-written report. I would also like to add is that we have been working with the council under a planning performance agreement on this planning application, and on this particular occasion, that's worked extremely well. For those that are familiar with the site, is that our client has had this site for some 20 years, and as just pointed out, is that what we've seen is a decline in the student market in this outer location in the last 10 years. In effect, the students have moved more into the city, and hence it's now come to a point where it was no longer viable to remain open, and that bus service is gone with the closure of this facility. This is an outline application, but we've worked very closely with officers to ensure that on the structure plan that there is an orange line within that plan that restricts the built development to within that orange line to ensure that there is no greater tree loss than what's already shown on the structure plan. The point about the green belt is protected in part by this permission in the fact that we've got on site enough volume to build something in the order of 300 to 350 dwellings as a volume within the green belt, but clearly in the way that this structure plan is being laid out is that this permission will cap it to a maximum of 261, and we think that's an appropriate way to take forward the reserve matters under a green belt openness argument. We have sought to work with our neighbours, which is a point raised about master planning within the officer's report. But sadly, the land immediately adjacent for 300 dwellings has had that permission now for something like 20 years. And therefore, we can't, to some extent, interfere with that. We are pleased we've reached a resolution on highways, and what we would say, of course, is that this is not highways being generated from new. When it was a student site, there was a significant number of students on the site. There was 3 car parks, and therefore there was a regular, relatively high number of vehicles travelling in and out of the site. We are, again, pleased to see that the council is in agreement on the removal of the cycleway on the North Road. It was something that we thought we were being encouraged to provide, but if the council's comfortable in not being that the case and it would have created more disruption locally, then it's fine by us. There has been a conversation about tree loss, and yes, we accept there is a degree of tree loss. However, a large proportion of that tree loss has either been brought about through the student development or encroachment onto the previously developed hospital site land. So what we've done with this particular layout is that we work very closely with the council's tree officer and the design officers to make sure that this development can come forward in a logical way with minimum disruption to trees. And then finally, Chair, noting my time is up, is that we are seeking an early decision today on the basis of a very high level of trespass and vandalism. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we'll come to members. Councillor Sokol, you had your hand up first and then...
Thank you, Chair. When I read this report on this weekend, written by officer, I actually agree with some concern raised by Councillor Taylor in the report. Yeah. Well, when I went on site visit this morning, and I look around, and the officer explained on the site, my views actually are different now, what I thought in the weekend. First of all, the entrance access. I'm quite happy It's turning into two-way traffic on there, and I'm quite happy they relocating those listed piers on the wide scale. I'm quite happy they're keeping the access to coming out of the track. The sight lines have been widening, so sight line provided because it's facing right onto the residential property on that. That's quite good. Yeah. I was most concerned about the double yellow line on the north road. Well, when I checked this morning, those side double yellow line right, it's only on the junction on the bottom. Yeah. To keep that's acceptable. Yeah, I think residents still can park on the opposite side on the north road. Fish shop shop. The officer explained on the side pages. Fish shops, they still have four or five car park spaces there. People come. People don't stay longer. They just pop up there, drop off, they go. Yeah. Take the fish and shop. Control pedestrian crossing. I'm really quite happy with that. This is on the main busy roads, Penistone Road. This pedestrian crossing, actually, it will slow down the traffic on both ways on the pedestrian, near the fish and chip shop or on the junction, which is going up to Kirkburton. Yeah? Even, I think it's cars coming out from the Kirkburton on the junction, they get the benefit because traffic will slow down, they get the chance to turn right there. That's good anyway, yeah? And I'm quite happy the officer are providing footway on the narrow bridge. That's lovely, yeah? That's we get benefit. People who are traveling on there. On trees, I know some of trees have to go, and that's mainly in the student accommodation area. But most of the trees on the Stores Hall Lane side, they all will be kept. That's quite good. And some of the trees inside the boundary there will be kept. That's fine, yeah. And I think officer has said in the report the contribution, transport contribution, bus service, yeah, 5-year funding, that's quite good. By the time residents move in there, they will find their own ways, or bus service might be extended, yeah, education funding, yeah. There's some objectors have said about the affordable houses. 20% is down to 10%, but it's been well explained by the officer. When it's a empty property or vacant property, there is a discount about from 20 to 10%. So that's acceptable, yeah. Chair, this place is empty place now. It looks derelict. I know it's a student accommodation. Nobody uses it. Windows are boarded up, everything is like. So I know it's a green belt, it's in green belt, but it's a brownfield area. It's a brown. We need houses on brownfield. It's a government guideline, our local authority guideline. First you use brownfield site, so that's what we are doing. I'm totally agree with the officer recommendation to approve this, and in fact, I'm moving this application to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I am actually a Kirkburton Ward councillor, so I do have very close knowledge of the site and some of its history. And I recognise and applaud that a great deal of officer time and expertise has gone into this matter. And I have no issues with the major central part of this application, the layout around the former Stores Hall Hospital or student accommodation, if you like. I regret that the ambitious plans for a retirement living complex adjacent to this site appear to have stalled. and I very much want to see this present scheme for part of the Stores Hall site getting underway, and the sooner the better. This is the sort of brownfield site that I would like to see prioritised, although I do appreciate that it may be some time yet before a spade cuts the turf. But this does not mean that I would support the scheme without question. And in fact, had the North Road, Penistone Road Junction cycle proposals remained as part of this application, I would have very, very seriously considered voting against the application. As it is, and with North Road removed from the equation, I do still have serious misgivings. These centre on highways and broader travel issues, and I most certainly do not feel any of the disappointment of officers mentioned in the update report regarding the withdrawal of the cycle provisions at North Road. Regarding paragraph 1042 of the committee report, which is page 37, I note that there are no shops, GP surgeries or dental practices in either Stocksmoor or Farnley Tyres, or indeed Thurston, despite the impression that may have been given in the report. It is true that many of these facilities are available in Kirkburton, which has chronic problems with lack of parking, but I think it far more likely that residents of the new build will in fact use Stores Hall Lane to turn left onto Penistone Road and thence travel to Waterloo at the nearest, where a good range of facilities are provided, or continue on to Huddersfield. Looking at paragraphs 10, 44, 47 and 48, it is fanciful, if not fantastical, to suppose that this site would generate much in the way of cycle traffic. I use the surrounding roads regularly, and cyclists are a very rare breed indeed during late autumn, winter and early spring. Even during the more clement months, they are not in the least plentiful, and it is just not imaginable that many residents of this development will cycle to and from fairly distant places of work. Nor will they even cycle to and from Kirklees, for the local topography is against them, necessitating in either direction a steep descent to the low point at Stores Hall Bridge and then a steep uphill section. In similar vein, people are just not going to cycle to the supermarket at Waterloo or the other shops nearby for their weekly shopping. That will again be a car journey, as most likely it will be taking children to and from school. It will be a rare parent who is content for the children to walk or cycle along busy and narrow roads on the school trip, especially in the dark winter months. Local and national aspirations, laudable as they are, to enhance active travel remain just that, aspirations. We're a Pennine town, and what may be feasible in Cambridgeshire and East Anglia, or in a large conurbation, is not always going to attract many adherents here. We need to take a practical view, as paragraph 1086 does to some small degree admit. Meanwhile, in paragraph 1085, we are told that development users would be largely reliant on private motor vehicles and public transport. I have little faith that reliable bus service will be sustainable here, especially after the 5-year subsidy ends. And I think it inevitable that a private car will predominate. Despite the assurances given in paragraph 1086, I believe that the predicted trip rates in paragraph 1087 are rather too optimistic. It's most likely that these are gross underestimates, and I am struck by the admission that even on these artificially low estimates, the Stores Hall Lane Penistone Road junction will be marginally over capacity at the morning peak. Given that there is more development taking place in Shepley and at the bottom of Rowley Lane, there is a clear danger that Penistone Road will be overwhelmed in the near future. Such an eventuality would have knock-on effects for this development, and I fear that a substantial proportion of future residents will be tempted to turn left out of the development, thus adding to traffic problems already experienced in Farnley Tyres. Frankly, I believe that this development is on the very margin of sustainability regarding its effects on the local road network. Plus, we should not forget that plans for more than 300 dwellings have already been approved on the site adjacent to this one. Though that scheme may have stalled for now, we cannot assume that it will never be built, nor that it may be amended to include family dwellings instead of the current proposal. I want to see the Stores Hall site in its entirety developed. However, we have a clear duty to ensure that we protect the residential amenity of present and future residents. Part of that is ensuring that people are able to travel freely to go about their daily business, and also ensuring that the local roads, including through family ties, do not become gridlocked. I am not fully convinced that this scheme, especially with regard to the effects of a substantial increase in traffic generation, adequately protects the interests of residents of nearby villages, and I do not believe that it does enough to ensure the free running of Penistone Road. And I'm very sorry, Mr. Chairman, but phantom cyclists do nothing to help here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Sites like this are awkward. Sites like this are ones that are in the green belt, sometimes isolated from other communities. Although this one isn't that isolated, it's still disconnected from other communities, in my opinion, and requires a reasonably long walk, not on the level, to get to any of the adjacent communities. So it's not connected very well to either Kirkburton or Farnley Tyres, unless you're looking at driving there, of course. And I'll come to that in a minute, because driving is what all the way through this report we're trying to stop people from doing, if at all possible. But realistically, that is going to be difficult. The thing that worries me, and this does apply to the existing permission, which we can't do anything about, it's already there, is that unlike other communities, there are, with the exception of some very good sporting facilities on or near the site, no community facilities there. It's just houses. And that does worry me a bit, because if you're going to develop sites like this, and to some extent I'm lumping this in with a lot of other mental hospital sites throughout the country, some of which are in much more isolated locations than this. But the same principle applies, because they tend not to be in communities. The whole idea was that they were built separate, and that's what we've got here. Now, clearly, its use as student accommodation hasn't worked for all the reasons that have been mentioned, and that has kind of created a principle for development on the site. But also, if I can remind people, arrangements were made to get the students from there into the town centre. I'm not aware, although I could be wrong, that any teaching actually took place on the site. No, I didn't think it did. In a way, they were a captive audience, but this is not what we're being asked to do here. And so I do worry that we haven't got community facilities built into this. Then we come to public transport. Now, many years ago, there was an application on a site, sort of the back of Waterloo, Elliott's Brickworks, where there was a new development. And one of the things that happened there was that the developers were asked to pay a sum of money, I forget what it was at the time, to provide a bus service that went through the site for 5 years. I do not remember how long this lasted. Councillor Taylor might know, but well, I certainly know that it's not there now, and I don't know how long it lasted. So therefore, I'm a bit worried that there is a provision for doing this as in part of the Section 106 agreement. That it will last 5 years, maybe a bit longer, and then the bus company will discover that it doesn't actually work, even with franchising, which I wholeheartedly support. But even franchising can't put money into routes that don't pay, so I am worried about that. And I think that I mean, it might not be enough for me to vote against it, but I think what I'm trying to suggest is some slightly stronger safeguards to get the development that we perhaps want on the site. I have looked at the conditions, and for instance, I'm not quite sure what it says about trees and about the replacement of in places on the site where suitable tree planting could be conditioned. Now, I understand that will be a job for the reserved matters. I do understand that, but I think we should be sending a message at this stage to say that tree cover should, where possible, be enhanced on the site, because that's one of the characteristics of this site, that it has got or has had on it a lot of trees. It's all coming back to me. Yeah, sorry about that. So that's one of the things that I think we need to look at. Some of the conditions to say, do they do what we actually want to happen? I'm a bit sad also about the loss of the venue, because normally why would you demolish what appears to be a perfectly sound building? I don't know whether it's sound. If it isn't, that's a different matter. But it would add some character to the development, it seems to me. So whilst I'm in general in support of this, I just think we need to have maybe tighten up some of the things that we're asking for, because it is a particular problem, as Mr. Herter said. It's a development in the Greenbelt. It's not been taken out of the Greenbelt. It's in the Greenbelt. So we have to try and it's a bit of, I was going to say a bit of a conjuring trick, maybe not. That's the wrong word, but it's a difficult balance to get that sort of right. And I'm not totally convinced that we've got all the things right yet, but otherwise I'm generally in support. I'll reserve matters till later. So.
Yeah, thank you. So just to come back then, so just to cover off some of the points, Adam, I don't know if you want to comment back on anything that Councillor Almer said around the highways. So I think, some of it was already answered, but was there anything else you wanted to add on the back of that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. In terms of the highway improvements and the traffic impact, I think we're not trying to suggest that there's going to be a high proportion of people walking and cycling. The intention is to try and improve the facilities to facilitate those people that will want to do that. So the provision is going to be there to enable people to walk safely between the site and Kirkburton. But yes, realistically, that's not going to be a high number of people. So in terms of the assessments that have been undertaken, they've been undertaken based on a robust assessment approach. So to put that into context, the trip rate that's been used is 0.6 per dwelling. For a site that might be in a more urban area, we'd be looking at probably a trip rate of 0.5, so it's 20% higher to take account of the fact that the site is in more of an isolated location. So a robust assessment of traffic impact has been undertaken. In terms of the Stores Hall Lane, Penston Road junction, again, we appreciate it. It's a constrained junction, and it's very limited what we can do to, or what can be done to improve it. But everything that we have identified as being possible to improve that junction for the safety of vehicles and other people has been done. So that includes the improvements to visibility, very localised double yellow lines just opposite the junction to assist that right turning movement. Very localised yellow lines at the top of Stores Hall Lane just to stop any parking obstructing vehicles turning right in and right out of the junction. So yeah, they are minor improvements, but they're improvements that all cumulatively are aimed to try and improve its operation. I don't think, was there any other specific issues that to touch on?
No, I think some general comments. I think
Yeah.
just to say on the highways, I suppose, and just listening to a few of the comments, you know, so as part of the discussions, we've sought to improve a number of things. One of those is the highways network, and I think being on that site, which is one, you can see some of that really probably should be in place today. For example, you know, when you're trying to turn out of Stores Hall Lane, it's, you know, it's very difficult. So I think there's the positive things. On the public transport element, I suppose my thought would be, but you know, we have a lot of developments where we don't get any confirmation of any bus services. We just hope that one might turn up. And I appreciate this is a slightly different scenario because of the remoteness, but seems to me like quite a good thing to at least secure 5 years, with the potential that could then be sustained if people utilise it. Whereas, you know, we could not have that. 1 second. So yeah, I think we should bear that in mind. Similarly, I guess on the facilities. Yeah, I mean, again, it's quite unusual unless we have a very, very large development that we actually plan community facilities and things within those. You wanted to come back on that particular point? So I think it's just to bear that in mind. Councillor, what did you want to say just quickly? Yeah.
All I was going to say on the buses is we've got to remember that hopefully, maybe within that 5 years, the retirement village may come along. That may actually provide some more passengers for that bus service, which might help keep it going. That's if they ever get around to actually building the retirement village, to be fair.
Exactly, so first. Yeah, Matthias?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks to Councillor Taylor. The thing with the buses is it's about finding the sweet spot of when you've got enough development on site so that you've got a reasonable level of patronage that will start using it. My experience of when I've done them elsewhere in the region is you put them in at the start and you think it's sustainable from the get-go. Well, there's only one house, or there's only 10 houses, or there's only 100 houses. There's not the patronage that justifies its retention. So rather, I wouldn't suggest that we say here and now we wait till there's 200 plus dwellings in before the bus launches, but some flexibility about the year that the pump priming starts is probably the sort of sophisticated way of dealing with it. And generally, you know, you're looking around the 100, 150 mark, aren't you? So that there's enough people to make it work. And if there is patronage, it will stay. But it does come down to usage. And actually, if you've done your job, we've done our job of providing the opportunities and giving people a really good chance for buses, for bus use, then that's as far as the planning system can go. And then just on the community dimension, you're absolutely right. The scale of development that you need to make small shops viable on development sites is probably double this. which may lead into where Councillor Taylor was talking about, should the stores site come forward in the future, who knows? But on the face of it, yeah, 250, you just wouldn't get a business that would be viable in that case, and therefore it's probably perhaps one for the next site that comes along, Councillor Pinnock. Hope that helps.
And then just on a couple of the other points then, I suppose on the trees, I suppose Councillor Pinnock, you were saying that you're questioning whether so we've got some protections in there because we've got a boundary that says what's protected, what's not. You're suggesting that there could be more we could do to protect some of the trees that are within that site, or that the conditions could mean they need to be more carefully looked at in the reserve matters. But I guess ultimately there is scope to look at the specifics within the reserve matters of trying to retain more of the trees. That's going to depend on who comes forward on that. Yeah. So I guess that is part of the reserved matters. And what was the other one? Oh, it was the venue building. So I don't know if there's anything to say on that. I mean, I think you've kind of covered it already.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I suppose it would be good to understand, Councillor, what conditions you may be wanting. Ultimately, demolition is demolition with the venue, with the tree loss. Yeah, there is scope to put that back in, but once the venue's gone, it's gone. If you had any thoughts about retaining elements of it, by all means, we can discuss that. But in our views, the demolition is on balance acceptable. Trying to keep parts of it wouldn't work and would kind of go against the whole point of getting it demolished. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, yeah.
Just again for information, adjacent to this site is Shelley Community Football Club. I don't know whether you actually walked up and saw that today or not, but they have a small cafe there, and they have ambitions to grow the size of the well, it's changing rooms and a cafe and area and I've talked to them about the possibility of them using that as a community room as well. So there may be something that once we start to have people living there again, that there's an opportunity there for that to support, and that would help the club as well financially. So benefits both sides. Just for information, really.
Nick, go back quickly.
It wasn't in regards to that, but it was just more general as a point of correction to get it in now. I think during my presentation I described the site as a housing allocation. Technically it's not a housing allocation. That is a singular policy that covers all the housing allocations in the district. This is it's a major development site in the green belt. The development has its own specific policy that refers to the green belt and what is appropriate. So just a matter of correction. Thank you.
Councillor Sokol. Yeah.
I just want to say, I remember when I used to work on buses a long time ago, there used to be a bus service from Huddersfield Town Centre. You go to Almumbury, you go to Farnetise, Farnetise, then you go to Storth Hall, turn around Storth, I go to Stocksmore, yeah? I don't know, the bus service is still there. I think it's still there. The bus service run from Huddersfield to Stocksmore by Farnetise, I think, because they might have stopped going down to Storth Hall because student accommodation, their university had their own transport running free bus between accommodation to University Huddersfield. I think when a 250 houses built there, they will consider to put a bus service down there.
I tell you, I think saying that probably service doesn't exist, but I take your point. You could if there were services that in the area, you could redirect them, etc. Councillor Pinnock.
Can I just come back on the venue, because I think it is always sad if you end up demolishing an old building, I mean, I would always say try and reuse it unless there is some very, very good reason why it can't be used, because you've got something that is a bit out of the ordinary in terms of what is probably going to be built on the site, and I could get into a sort of tautological argument about this really, but it does seem to me that reuse it could be a good thing.
Yeah, I suppose one thing I was thinking on, I suppose this is what you're getting at in terms of the demolition element. At the moment, we've only got an outline application, so we don't actually know whether a developer might come forward and say, well, actually, we think we can redevelop that building successfully, and obviously as part of the tree impact is in that area as well. So I suppose there's an argument to say, well, should that be part of the demolition, or can that be kept until such time as to come with a reserve matters? If that reserve matters then comes and says, well, we still want to demolish it, we want to put, but then at least it hasn't demolished a building that then, doesn't come to use, as an example. Yeah.
Just for context, the original outline when it came in included demolition of both of the buildings, as you'll recall, and Nick and his team fought pretty hard with the developer. But then they did accommodate the keeping of the other building, which you've shown is on the indicative plan, could be turned into half a dozen or dozen flats or whatever it is. So your point, Chair, if that is the committee's wish, then it can decide what it wants to grant demolition consent for today. And if that excluded the venue, that would be up to the committee. I think we have to be pretty honest and suggest that it's highly likely that a major house builder may come and take this site. That major house builder is unlikely to want to keep it, but you buy another opportunity for a relook at, and if that ameliorates to a point, but I think you have to probably envisage the long term that would be a cleared site for the development, because it contributes to the numbers that we've been talking about in the master plan that you've seen indicatively. But it's up to you. You can grant, refuse, vary, what you choose. It wouldn't be unreasonable what you've suggested, Chair.
Yep, Councillor Pinnock, yep.
Can I come back and suggest that is it possible for us to take that bit out of the description of the because it talks about demolition of buildings, just to say that's not there at all. Doesn't that work?
Go on.
Through Chair, it would be the use of conditions. So a condition along the lines of, notwithstanding submission, the plans, the building known as venue shall not be demolished, along those lines. So the description would stay as it is, but it would be a condition attached to that.
I mean, I don't know what colleagues think about this. So.
Do you want to suggest? Are you suggesting that as a?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else want any view on that or not? No. Okay. It doesn't sound like that's got the thing. So we tried. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So Councillor Sockley, you moved the office recommendation. And Councillor Thompson's going to second that. Okay, so I think we've had the debate now. We can move to a vote.
So you're voting on approval, subject to there was the change of description as set out in the update, the amended plans for off-site highway improvements as explained in the update, the additional conditions and note as in the update, and a section 106 with 5 heads of terms as set out in the officer's report. Councillor Socko?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
Councillor Armour?
With reservations. For.
Councillor Homewood?
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Right, that's the last application, so we're finished. Thanks everybody for your time this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
We were too short as well.